52433 ML. Right, we're back. It looks like we have everybody except Mr. Flood.
Your Honor,
Yes.
would the court be inclined to move back into the conservatorship case just for the moment? Mr. Polderman has circulated an order. I believe we're all in agreement with it. I believe we're all going to sign it. If the court could then.
Well, when I receive that, we'll take it up. Okay, Mr. Flood, let's get back to your direct examination. You remain under oath.
Yes, ma'am.
Detective. And whenever you're ready, Mr. Flood.
Thank you. Just need to power turn the order. I apologize, Judge. I just received this. This was the document for which it says live testimony. It's the power of attorney. Oh,
36.
that's correct. You've had the opportunity at some point in time in this investigation to review the power of attorney. Is that accurate? That allegedly, or that was forged according to experts in this case? You've had that opportunity?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And in that that you've seen, I'm just putting the pages together here so they're not out of order. This would be exhibit number 16. And Judge, may I approach?
You may.
Thank you. I'm handing you pages. This is being of 16. If I don't know, we can or can't pull it up on the screen for to see. Yeah. I'm handing you 2 pages that's basically identical. Do you note that or see that?
I do. One is just an enlarged version of the other, correct?
Okay. And as it relates to that exhibit 16, is this in reference to what was being used to ascertain a loan, this document after April 25th, 2021?
That's my understanding, yes, sir.
Okay. And in your understanding,
Excuse me, Your Honor. May I approach with this order? It's signed by everybody.
Any objection?
oh, it's nothing to do with me. So
No, it doesn't, but it might be the key is to a jail supplement.
Mr. Polderman, any objection to me reviewing the proposed order?
No,
Have
Your
you had a
Honor.
chance? Okay, thank you. You may.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I'll have a look at that. And Mr. Flood, you're referencing exhibit 36, is that right? Proposed exhibit 36?
no, we've already admitted to it, Judge. None of them are proposed. They're all been stipulated to.
Well, I don't have it, so
I'm going to give it to you.
I just wanted to make sure I still knew what we were talking about.
You're right, though. That's the power of attorney. Where one time we said live, we had to wait for the expert.
I thought I had heard you reference exhibit 16, so I just wanted to make sure I was clear on which.
I apologize.
Sorry.
As it relates to, and you can see D. Warner, you have no dispute, would you, with regards to the expert opinion that this is a forged signature? You'd have no dispute to that.
That's correct. But again, I was not here for that testimony. Yeah.
No, I understand. But I just want to make sure that it is your understanding that it was this document and this power of attorney that was being used in your investigation, you came to find out, to ascertain a loan after she went missing.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Thank you. One second, Your Honor. You're aware of the billboard activity, that campaign that took place in this case. Is it related to D Warner for Justice and the like? Yes?
Yes.
You're also aware of a website that was taken on for D. Warner and missing, fair?
Yes, sir.
And also there was publications you're aware of that were placed in the paper for D. Warner missing, yes?
Yes, sir.
In any of those publications, was there anything or any information that, I'll strike that. Did D. Warner ever call you or call Michigan State Police to tell you, hey, I'm alive based on these publications, you can stop looking for me?
No, sir.
Anyone call you and tell you based on those publications, hey, I have her, if you want her, give me X amount of money?
No, sir.
Did anyone on those publications give you any other clue, tip, investigative tool other to persuade you to something other than your opinion she's dead?
No.
Your Honor, I have marked, well, I did have marked the exhibits that were up here. Hold on again. And I will tender to the courts the exhibits of the medical examiner's reports of each one that this witness has identified and testified to.
Okay, which one specifically are we talking about?
We are talking about 6 through 15. 15 goes through live testimony, but we do in fact have the Wayne County Medical Examiner's reports. We're talking about the 18, 19, all the way through, Your Honor, 31. We also tendered already, for the record, 37, 36, giving I just marked, and referenced earlier was the O&O financial report supplemental. I can
All right, Mr. Flood, I do not have documents in support of your proposed exhibit 10, proposed exhibit 15, or proposed exhibit 36.
Okay.
It would appear the rest of the exhibits that you just referenced are in the book.
You're right. Here is 10. That's the Wayne County Medical Examiner's Office.
Thank you.
You got it?
Good games.
I'm sorry. Yep. 10 and 15 are the same, Your Honor.
All right.
One's Jane Doe. Oh, I'm sorry. Once I give it. Judge,
Yes. Just as,
this is 10 and 15. This is the other part. That's,
the record should reflect I'm handing back the documents that have been provided. Some of them appear to correspond to 10 and some do not. I have received, for the
that's-
record, a singular document entitled warrants, the Evans Wayne County Executive, date 5/11/23, acknowledgement of individual, or some of the words on the page. Is this what you want me to receive for 10?
that is yes, Your Honor. That 10, just so you know, there's two different ways to do this. There's the 10 that deals with the Jane Doe, and I'm sorry, 10 is D. Warner, and 15, Your Honor, is the Wayne County Jane Doe. So when the trooper, and when we subpoenaed these records for this, for the trooper to testify to, he wanted to look at it in two ways. One, to show there's no one that ever matched her identification and no one that ever matched D. Warner specifically. So there wasn't a Jane Doe. So we had to do it cumbersome, but we had to do it both ways with each medical examiner.
I heard all of his testimony. I was well aware that you
Great. So,
attacked it that way.
yeah, great. Thanks. I have both those exhibits. Unfortunately, this is right there. Washington. That's Washington.
Do you have a document that you would like me to receive in support of named Exhibit 15?
Yes, Your Honor, it's right here. Can I see that 10? See that?
You may approach.
Thanks. So, let me get a better copy, just slow down on the order. Judge, I'll submit it, attorney, no, I'll have it submitted. Let me just get, because there's a blur here as far as reading the name. So let me get a better document for you, if you don't mind.
It's up to you.
No, that's what I want to do. I want to give you something better to see.
All right, so the record should reflect then that I do not have documents in support of 10 or 15 or 36 at this point.
Thank you. I will get the better copies of that printout for you, Your Honor. Last one you said was 30 MDOC. I do have in fact 30 MDOC.
36.
No, you just had the MDOC, that's Michigan Department of Corrections records. Okay. Oh, okay. No, I apologize. MDOC was live testimony. That was the Michigan Department of Corrections. Thank you, Your Honor. I have no other questions at this time.
Okay. Cross-examination, Mr. Lee?
Yes, Your Honor. Detective Sergeant, I'm Larry Lieb. I'm gonna try to keep my voice up. I have a tendency to talk softly. I'm not sure why, but I'll try to keep my voice up. I'm continuously reminded of that. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You and I have met before, right?
Sure have.
We've had conversations for approximately over a year and a half. Is that true?
I'm not certain the first time I spoke to you, sir, but no, it will be at least a year in December. So yeah.
Okay. I believe you testified earlier, you became involved in the investigation in March of 2022. Is that right?
Roughly, yeah, thereabouts.
And within a few days of your becoming involved, you and I had a conversation. Is that fair?
Honestly, sir, I'm not disputing. I just don't recall.
Okay, that's fair enough. But you don't dispute that you and I have had many conversations over this case over the course of the last year and a half. Is that true?
At least a few, yes, sir.
And I have been approachable for whatever you have asked for, including producing Mr. Warner for any interviews that you've asked. Is that true?
Fair enough, yes, sir.
Okay. I have also, in the course of representing Mr. Warner, given you essentially carte blanche to visit his home, his office, his fields, his barns, his equipment, for anything and everything that you've asked for. Is that true?
I'm not certain I've asked you for any of those things, sir.
I haven't denied it, right? And you've been working with the sheriff's department, I guess, since you began this case, and I never denied it to them either. But you'll agree with me, I haven't denied you, or Mr. Warner has never denied you access to anything. Is that true?
That's not true.
Okay. When have we ever denied you access to anything?
He denied me access to at least one electronic device that became a topic of debate in person.
Okay. Did it contain any financial information or anything that we need to produce it for?
It contains numerous things.
Okay. What was it?
It was a cellular phone.
And do you know whose phone it was?
I was in the possession of Dale Warner.
Okay. Do you know who owned the phone or what it was about? Was it his daughter's phone?
No, it was Dale Warner's phone or a phone that he used.
Have you ever saw a search warrant for that phone?
We had a search warrant for that phone.
Okay, and you did download it though, didn't you?
That specific phone, yes, sir.
Okay. So there's nothing that we haven't provided either voluntarily or through a search warrant. Is that true?
Judge, a search warrant, that's a misnomer. I object to the mischaracterization. Search warrant's a command by a court, not by Mr. Leeds' permission.
This is correct.
You're welcome to cross-examine.
I-
Thank you.
Come on.
Would you agree, Detective, that you and I have had an open, free-flowing discussion about this case and we have worked together on this?
I don't know if that's an accurate representation, no, sir.
Okay. When you became involved with the Lenawee County Sheriff's Department, how did that begin? Did they call you or did you just, as a Michigan State Trooper, involve yourself?
Oh, no, sir, I was contacted. I'm not certain if I was contacted directly or if it was my work site. Nonetheless, I was directed at their request to come and aid them.
Were you specifically or the Michigan State Police and then you were assigned the project?
I'm nowhere near that special, sir, just my department.
Okay. And you were assigned the project and you have a partner that's working with you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, who's your partner?
Detective Sergeant Scott Singleton.
And I have met with Scott Singleton and yourself, at least on one occasion, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And that was with Mr. Warner?
That's accurate.
Have you and Sergeant Singleton worked exclusively together on this case, or have you handled a portion and he has for you?
He and I are both investigating different aspects, but both have a working knowledge of each other's work. Does that make sense?
Fair enough. You're coming together, but you're handling a portion, he's handling a portion, but you're under the same umbrella.
That's accurate, yes, sir.
Okay. And Has he been involved in this investigation as long as you have?
Yes, sir.
How many times have you visited Mr. Warren's property?
Are you referring to for the residences, the Mungo Road property,
We're
or?
going to go through all of the residents.
This is a kind of an estimate of 4 or 5, maybe somewhere in there, sir.
Okay.
There may have been other times that I have been near there, but not physically stopped at the residence, so I'm not sure what that total number is.
Okay. And how many times have you been to his office? Same amount of times?
Roughly, yes, sir.
How about the barns and the fields in the area around his office? Same.
Roughly. There may have been times I visited the office, but not the fields, perhaps, but in other words, I may have gone directly to the office and left without going through a field necessarily.
And when you have visited his home or his office or the barns or the fields, have you come into contact with Dale Warner?
Yes.
Okay. Have you come into contact with Mark Weisberg?
Not there. No, I believe the only time I've contacted Mark Weisberg in person may have been in this building. I don't think I've seen him at the property personally. I may have. No, I don't think I have.
Who else did you come into contact with at the home, office, whatever, that would have provided you information?
Outside of police personnel?
Yes.
Todd and Eric.
Who is Ted and Eric?
He works at the farm.
Okay.
I think for Laidlaw now, but he was an employee of theirs at the time.
Okay.
And Dale Warner's daughters.
Okay.
I think I may have come in contact with his mother once there.
Okay.
I'm sure there's someone I'm forgetting, sir, but that's the best of my knowledge now.
Fine. In the course of your investigation, have you spoken to each of these individuals?
Yes.
Have they provided information concerning your investigation?
Yes.
Have they provided financial records?
Some of them. Yeah.
Okay. In other words, you went to Mr. Warner's office and asked for financial records. They provided them to you. Is that true?
I'm not sure they provided me financial records at his office.
Where would they have provided them to you?
They probably provided them to Detective Sergeant Singleton, and I'm not certain where that was, to be forthright.
Okay. But in your conversations with Sergeant Singleton, you're aware that they've provided documents.
That's correct. Yeah, I wasn't sure what you're getting at. Yeah, we've definitely received them. That's what you're asking. Yeah.
Yes. And has Mr. Weisberg provided you documents concerning the businesses?
Yeah, and in an effort to save time, and you're saying you mean the investigation?
Yes.
Yes, yeah.
Yes. And when did he provide you the documents?
I'm not certain on that. It's been some time, sir. And there may have been more than one collection, so I couldn't even estimate because they weren't delivered to me. It was my partner. I'm not certain when that was.
Okay. But in concert with your partner, they were over a year ago. Is that true?
If you say so, I'm not sure.
Okay. Did Mr. Warner and Mr. Weisberg provide you financial records of all of the Warner companies along with their personal financial records?
I'm not sure to what extent we had their personal financial records, but there was definitely records for the businesses. That's correct.
Do you recall them producing QuickBooks downloads and passwords for other investigators?
Yes, sir, I believe so.
Do you know who ran Dee Warner's office while she was working there?
Do I know what I'm sorry?
Do you know the structure of who ran Dee Warner's office while she was working there?
I believe so, yes, sir.
Okay, and who was that?
It was a collection of Dee Warner, her son, Zach, and Stephanie. The specific hands-on for quote unquote running the office is kind of convoluted, but I'm sure Todd had a hand in some of those responsibilities also.
Did Dale Warner have any hand in it at all, that you know?
I'm sure there was some responsibilities that he had, but my understanding is he was typically out farming. That was his primary role.
Now, you mentioned that there was a collection of people there. Do you know what their roles were and what they were responsible for doing specifically?
Yeah, I'd like to object. I'm not sure what the relevance of this line of questioning is.
Adjourn in the objection, Judge.
Because they asked for financial records, they produced them, and there's been some allegation here that there's been some problems with missing money. There was an allegation earlier that was $125,000 missing from the Yo and Yo audit, trying to get to that and where it happened. I just want to know who was responsible for that. And I'm asking the detective if he knows.
This was asked and answered on direct, but it's your cross-examination, so you're allowed to re-ask those questions. You may
Thank you.
proceed. The
Thank you.
objection's overruled.
Thank you. Was Zach Bach responsible for doing payroll and handling most of the finances with Dee Warner?
I believe that was in concert with her, but I think he was assuming many of those roles. Yes, sir.
Okay. And he was a signer on all the accounts.
That's my understanding, yes, sir.
Did you come to find out that there was a diversion of money from Dee Warner to Zach Bach to purchase a home?
Yes.
Okay. And when was that done?
I couldn't tell you, sir, the exact date.
Okay.
I believe it. I didn't want to venture a guess. I'm sorry.
Did you discover in your investigation that Zach Bach was responsible for writing checks to his mother after the date of her disappearance?
That Zach was writing checks to his mother from her day of disappearance. I am not privy to that.
Briefly, Judge.
You may.
Judge, I don't have what Mr. Lee is referring to in my hands. I don't know what he wants to approach about.
This is a BBW investments summary that came right out of the book. There's a check that was produced
Approved by whom?
for the bank.
Yeah, sure, it's not enforcement.
No, for interior,
Yeah,
but that's. Your Honor, I would ask for more foundation. I don't believe that this witness testified as to specific bank records or checks that he reviewed in his investigation.
And furthermore, Your Honor, I agree with the foundational aspect. This is alleged or purported to be someone's signature on here. I don't have any of that information. And you'd have to first lay a foundation to submit that. And
I was prepared to do that. That's what I was going to do and show him the document.
well,
Sorry, Mr. Flood.
Couldn't hear you.
apologizing for, Judge?
I couldn't hear you.
I said, I think you're jumping the gun. I'm just going to ask the detective sergeant a question. If he knows, he knows. If he doesn't know, he doesn't.
I think
Well,
those would have to be asked before you can present him to the document.
You can have a look at the document and go from there.
Have you ever seen those documents, detective?
I've seen numerous checks that are similar to this, sir. I can't speak to seeing this one specifically prior to right now.
Okay, so you are familiar with the fact that there were checks written to Dee Warner after her disappearance?
well, no, Judge, I object to it. We don't know the date those are written. We don't know the dates, just because it says that, we don't know. So I object to the form of the question. And he has laid a foundation for that purpose.
So, help me understand, Mr. Lee, why it's important to note that there were checks that were issued after her disappearance.
Well, Judge, if there were checks issued after the date of her disappearance by her son or anyone else that was working in the office, that would account for why there was $125,000 missing.
How does that help me understand that that's part of the amount of money that's missing?
We don't necessarily know where the money is. We don't know that it was done in cash or whatever.
Actually, this
Judge, I believe-
detective sergeant has already testified to that. So if you have some cross-examination on that point, I'm happy to listen to that, but
That might be for another day, Judge. I'll move on.
Ms. Berger, did you have something you wanted to add?
Nothing additional, Judge, thank you.
Detective, I want to just get back to your interviewing the people that worked in the office. Did you interview everybody that was working there at the time that the went missing?
They have numerous employees, if you're referring to specific people that were working in the office at that time. Myself and my partner, between the two of us, have interviewed all of them. Yes, sir.
And it could be just questions about, hey, do you know what happened to her? And on, right?
That's accurate, yeah.
Yeah. Now, in your investigation at the Warner property, did you ever find Deanne Warner?
No,
Did you ever find anything that would reflect Deanne Warner, such as a body, a hair follicle, anything of her person?
Judge, unfortunately, there is the shield of protection for an ongoing investigation by the Michigan State Police and the FBI and the Sheriff's Department pursuant to both statute and case law, that he's not allowed to divulge anything is actually could come into consequence of trouble if he did divulge an ongoing investigation criminal, unless it was previously marked and subpoenaed information from and through this court. He can't get into an ongoing case. And if the court needs the body of case law on that, in civil proceedings, he actually would get in trouble for a violation of getting into his findings of anything regarding DNA, the like.
Okay, Mr. Flood, I'll move on. No problem, Judge. I withdraw that question. You did not find Miss Warner physically, though, did you?
correct.
Okay. And you have, to this day, over 2 years later, she's still missing, correct?
Correct.
Nobody that you know of, whether it was the Lenawee County Sheriff Department, the Michigan State Police, the FBI, the international network that you testified to earlier, nobody's been able to find her. Is that right?
That's correct.
Now, you've been called to testify today because of your background and because of your experience, and I get that, and you have a wealth of experience, and I appreciate that. But as you sit here today, your testimony that she's deceased is your opinion. Is that true?
That is the findings of my investigation.
Okay. And the findings of your investigation are downloads from law enforcement websites, such as the Law Enforcement Information Network, correct?
I'm sorry.
That is a part of your, what forms your opinion is that there's been no activity on the law enforcement network.
A piece of it, yes, sir.
Okay. And help me, detective, if she hasn't been arrested and she hasn't had any contact with law enforcement at all, she wouldn't be on that lien, would she? The only things that are, you testified earlier, the only things that are in the lien are when you have contact with the police, right? Or some form of law enforcement.
Correct.
Okay. Likewise, the Secretary of State if there isn't an issue with her driver's license and it didn't need to be renewed, and she hadn't been stopped by a law enforcement officer and assessed points, and she hadn't gone to register a business or register a vehicle, she would not appear on the Secretary of State Information Network. Is that true?
Activity, that's correct.
During your investigation, you testified that you sought out the Secret Service and some other international bodies to help you search for facial recognition and stuff, right?
That's a standard proof of life request. Yes, sir.
Okay, and that would be done in any case, anywhere, when you want to determine whether or not somebody's missing. Is that right?
Maybe not every case, but that's kind of standard practice for us at the state police. Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm going to take you back to April of 2021. We're in the middle of COVID, right?
It's during COVID. Yeah.
There, I believe at the time there was a federal mandate that you had to wear a mask wherever you went. You agree with that?
If you say so, sir. I don't know the exact dates. Yes, sir.
And on ballpark dates, I get it. I'm not asking you for a specific date, but at that time, we all can agree that we were all wearing masks in public places, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if Ms. Warner was wearing a mask, how would that have accounted for any facial recognition anywhere?
Are you asking me specifically a border crossing, sir?
Border crossing or anywhere else?
I'm unfamiliar with the practices of people that work, border patrol, et cetera, security. I would assume they would ask you to remove your mask going through those things, but I can't tell you how they practice their principles, sir.
Fair enough. And Detective Sergeant, in your wealth of experience for many, many years, you've come in contact with what's referred to in lay terms as dark web, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can you explain what the dark web is?
The dark web is loosely known for being able to obtain and or purchase things that are less than legal. So whether it be illegal credit card information, drugs, stolen items, et cetera.
Driver's license,
In some cases, correct.
passport.
Correct.
Okay. And we don't know as we sit here today that Ms. Warner didn't attempt to purchase any of those products, do we?
I can say I found no evidence of her attempting to do that.
Okay, but as we sit here today, we don't know that for certain, right?
Correct.
Okay. Detective Sergeant, we know that she's missing.
Well, Judge,
But
I stand to object on this because we're getting equivocal. I thought, if I understood it correctly, and I have the transcript, I have, the objection is he's withdrawn his objection to the petition of why we're here today. He withdrew it and said that he has to concede. So if he says she's missing, that's misleading this court and this record.
Well, Your Honor, up until this court makes a legal determination that she's deceased, she's missing, I do not disagree with what Mr. Flood said. We have withdrawn our objection to the petition, but I'm trying to clarify the evidence and just in my own mind understand the Detective Sergeant's testimony. If I might go through a few more things, then I'll be done.
The objection is overruled. You
Thank you. Detective Sergeant, you talked with Mr. Flood about the power of attorney. And you testified earlier that you were not aware of the testimony of the power of attorney, right?
He was referring, I think, to an expert witness, and I was not here for that
Correct.
testimony.
Correct. Okay. So when Mr. Flood says that the signature was fraudulent, that's just based upon what their expert said, right? You don't know the circumstances behind the power of attorney.
Well, I may be misremembering, but he was asking me my investigative opinion, I think, in addition to that, sir.
Okay. Do you know how this power of attorney came about? Through your interviews with anybody, do you know why this power of attorney was dated October 20th, 2014.
My first understanding of the power of attorney surfacing is Dale Warner attempting to gain funds in D. Warner's name at a bank, presenting the document and being rejected.
Okay. Do you know whether or not this durable power of attorney was drafted by an attorney?
I couldn't tell you, sir.
Did anybody ever tell you that it was drafted by an attorney?
I don't believe so. No, sir.
It looks like an attorney's work. That's why I'm asking you. Do you know whether or not there were, strike that, in your investigation of the businesses and B. Warner's disappearance, you were provided copies of operating agreements for the businesses? True?
Again, I think you're saying me, but the investigation was for the chief.
Yeah. Yeah.
Singleton of- yeah.
Yes. And those operating agreements were drafted by attorneys, correct?
I couldn't tell you who drafted them, sir. I wasn't there.
In the course of your investigation, did you ever interview an attorney named Jim Duzema?
I don't believe I've spoken with Jim. No.
He would be an attorney in Grand Rapids and he represented the Warners in their businesses. You don't, that name's not familiar.
I recognize the name, but I'm not certain I've interviewed him.
Could Detective Singleton have interviewed him?
It's possible. I think I would know if he did.
Okay.
It's perhaps likely or possible that Detective Greca, my predecessor, interviewed him.
Detective Greck is with the Ledway County Sheriff's Department.
That's correct.
Okay. Did you ever interview anybody at Yale?
I have not. The investigation has.
Okay, would have been Detective Singleton again?
Correct. And I don't want to mischaracterize that. I'm not certain it was a formal interview. I think we spoke with them and were provided documents in response to the search warrant.
Okay.
I'm not certain we had a formal sit-down interview with them.
Okay. So your analysis of the $125,000 accounted for, with 40,000 being mislabeled, 80,000 missing, and your determination that approximately 71,000 were payments by to K Jewelers and Victoria's Secret, leaving 9,000 missing. That would have come from Ionio, right? Or was that your calculation?
That's our work product.
Your work. How did Miss Warner get the cash to make the payments on these accounts, if you know?
I'm not certain.
Did anybody at the Warner companies, any of the people that worked in Deanne Warner's office, indicate how she was able to take that cash and pay those bills?
Are you referring to how she would take the cash or how she would obtain the cash? I'm not clear on the question.
How she would obtain the cash and how she would get it and make those payments?
My understanding, she was receiving a formal paycheck. Cash outside of that, there are withdrawals from different accounts and different activities that she was obtaining cash from her accounts.
Are you aware that Deanne Warner had an off-book bank account at TCF Bank?
I am.
Okay. And do you know what that account was used for specifically?
I don't know if it was used for a specific thing.
Okay. Can you suggest things that might have been paid for using that account?
I don't want to get ahead of you here. If you're getting to the lake house, I think that was one of the uses of the accounts. Is that what you're getting at?
No, but that's fine. Was it used to purchase jewelry, used to purchase other products?
I'm not familiar with exact purchases made from it. If it was cash from the account, I wouldn't know what the cash was applied to. Is that what you're asking?
Yes. And we could just check the check registry or the register of transactions and determine that. So I'm not going to get into that with you, but you are aware that this TCF account was only her account.
That's my understanding. I think her son Zach may have been on it at one point, but I'm not certain.
Okay. You testified earlier that Miss Warner's spending habits at K Jewelers were were pretty vigorous, right?
I think I use the terms regular or consistent or something to reflect that. Yeah.
Okay, and do you know how long and over what course of time she made these purchases?
I believe we have records that go back to perhaps 2015, but prior to, and this is off memory, sir, forgive me, prior to 2017 or 16, there's less information obtained within, just based off of time. I think they lost some of the data.
Did you ever interview?
Actually, can I go back? Mr.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Of course you
There's-
can.
To not overcomplicate things, there are Comenity credit card records that are a reflection of K Jewelers, so I may be mixing information from one or the other. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Comenity is a credit card servicer for that.
Right. Did you ever interview Ms. Coswell?
I have not.
There was some testimony earlier about this phone that with Dee's phone number and the phone, and I was confused, and I just want to go over that for a couple seconds and just clarify for myself what that was. So Dee's phone number was never turned off, right? In other words, from the date of her missing, even though there was no calls made, the phone number was still working, right?
Actively serviced through Verizon?
Yes.
That's my understanding.
Okay. And so from your testimony earlier, there were no calls either coming in or going out on that period of time until law enforcement asked Dale Warner to make a call. Is that true?
That information is not correct and your portrayal is not correct.
Okay, help me out.
So there were calls incoming, for instance, her children looking for her, perhaps.
Okay.
And then law enforcement did not ask Dale Warner to do anything. Dale Warner asked law enforcement if he could obtain a phone and put the phone number on it.
Okay. And do you know what purpose he wanted to do that? Was it toward the businesses?
That was his explanation to the sheriff's department, is my understanding.
Okay, because the businesses, bless you, because some of the vendors and some of the accounts for some of the businesses utilize that number, isn't that true?
One of the primary phone numbers for the business, right?
Okay, now it's clear. So Mr. Warner wanted to use that number because it was frequently used in the business prior to her disappearance.
I don't know what he was thinking, but. that's-
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, I get it now. All right, let's go to the SBA loan for a minute. Do you know what the circumstances were behind obtaining the SBA loan?
No.
Did you ever talk to the SBA about how they process a PPP loan?
No, we've received some records from them, but I've never spoken to someone. No, sir.
Okay, and it's all digital, isn't it?
I couldn't tell you.
Okay. There's no hand signatures on a PPP loan, right?
I have no idea, sir.
Would that have been something that you would have read or investigated as a part of looking into the SBA loan?
Whether or not there's wet signatures?
Yeah.
No, I have not. I have no information about that, sir. No.
Okay. Do you know whether or not it was Dale Warner that requested the SBA loan, that applied for it?
I'm not sure how I would know that, sir.
Okay. So as you sit here today, you don't know whether or not Dale Warner or anyone else applied for it. You just know that there was an SBA loan, right?
I think that the records would indicate that he was the one that would apply, as he's the one that received the funds.
Okay. But you don't know the circumstances behind whether or not an operating agreement of the business or a power of attorney or the advice of counsel, another attorney, such as Jim Duzman, might have suggested that that was an appropriate way to make a loan application. Would you?
I'm not sure what you're asking me. I'm sorry.
Okay. So when somebody makes an SBA loan, you call the SBA, you say, I want to borrow some money. Okay. The SBA says, okay, what's the money going to be used for? And then they investigate whether or not you're in a position to obtain the loan, whether or not you have sufficient collateral, business, whatever. Fair? Okay. In this case, when the loan was applied for, you don't know whether or not a business operating agreement or an other business documents.
Your Honor, I'm going to object. I believe that this witness already testified he has no knowledge surrounding the actual document for the SBA loan.
Lack of personal knowledge, any response?
I testified that he had seen the loan for $1.5 million. I just wanted to know if you knew whether or not there was any information that was contained in the loan.
Information like what?
Who signed it, what was based on. I mean, if the operating agreement allowed somebody involved in the business to make the loan, then it was a perfectly reasonable loan.
He stated he didn't see
Yeah,
signatures.
He didn't see the operating agreement. Judge, the document has already been entered into evidence as it relates to the loan documents. So who signed it allegedly?
I'll overrule the objection. He's done a nice job of letting us know what he's seen and what he hasn't. So I think your witness can handle it. May proceed.
Okay. Detective, in your investigation, when you were looking at the financial records, how far back did you go to look at those records? 5 years, 10 years?
I have a good working knowledge of the finances going back to 2016. And to be clear, sir, we spoke of the concert of my partner and I. This is his ballpark.
Okay.
So I have a working knowledge of it, but he's the man behind the numbers.
Do you know whether or not he looked at specific accounts and whether or not specific things were paid for by Ms. Warner or not paid for by Ms. Warner, such as payroll taxes or things like that?
When
Yeah,
we
I
speak
don't-
of, as far as a time frame, Judge,
I also don't believe that it's relevant. This witness has testified that there was activity, and then after her disappearance, there was not activity. I don't believe the specific activity while she was still around is relevant at this point.
Would you like to respond?
No. She's your client. I mean, that's fine. I'll move on, Judge.
Okay.
Detective Sergeant, did you meet with any of these children within the course of the investigation?
And you have these children, I'm sorry?
Yes, these adult children.
Yes, sir, all of them.
Okay. And when did you meet with them and how many times?
I'm sure I met with them prior to us taking the case on full time. After that point, we began meeting with them for formal interviews in person, and I want to say it's October or November of last year. I've seen them numerous times subsequently, but for our formal interview was last fall, last winter.
Okay, and was there a standard set of questions that you asked each of the individual kids?
I don't believe our question could be standard, no, sir. It depends on the person, what we believe they may have known, where they were at the time, et cetera.
Okay. And so you interviewed Zach, you interviewed TJ, you interviewed Raquel, and you interviewed Amber. Were they all interviewed individually or together?
Everybody was interviewed individually.
Did you ever interview Greg Hardy?
I've spoken with Greg Hardy a number of times. I'm not certain I've done a formal interview in that capacity, sir.
Where were the interviews conducted with the children?
We typically use Saline Police Department.
Were there any notes taken of those interviews?
how is this relevant, Your Honor? Objection relevant?
I think it's relevant. Mr. Flood, this is cross-examination of a lead witness in your case. I'm just curious as to what he discussed with the children
Well,
of the person that's missing.
and I go back to the previous objection, Judge, as it relates to an ongoing investigation.
Objection is overruled. You may answer questions about the contents of this investigation. And again, I trust our detective sergeant to understand his own boundaries around an ongoing investigation. So we'll let him handle that question.
Thank you. In terms of your questioning them, did you question them on things that related directly to their mother or the circumstances between their mother and other people, or both?
Both.
Do you recall any conversations about a woman named Amy Alexander?
I don't know how much I spoke to other people about Amy Alexander, but I've spoken to Amy Alexander.
Okay, you had conducted an interview with her?
Yeah, I've spoken to her several times, yes, sir.
Did you ever discuss anything with any of these adult children about any of these finances and whether or not she lent them or gave them any money?
Yes,
And how extensive were those conversations? Were they ever asked to produce any documents to substantiate anything they were telling you?
I'm unsure. I'm unsure if I've asked them to produce documents at this point. And my uncertainty is because I know I have the documents. I'm not sure if they gave them to us or we acquired them through a search warrant or other means. That answers your question, sir.
I think it does, and I'm not going to delve into too much of that detail today. Did you ever interview Billy Little?
No,
And do you know who Billy Little is?
unfortunately.
Okay. Can you just tell me who he is?
I have a vague understanding of, he's perhaps a self-described private investigative attorney, is I guess the fairest way of representing him.
But he's not a Michigan attorney, is that true?
I have no idea.
And it's your testimony, you haven't talked to him other than just briefly?
He met with the sheriff's department. I was there. It was kind of a formal contact, but otherwise it's been informal in passing.
Okay. And did you obtain any of the results from the sheriff's department? That was included with everything else they gave you, right?
If I can back up, I was a part of that meeting also.
Okay.
So I don't know what you're referring to, receive something, but
So when the sheriff's department transferred the case to the Michigan State Police, is the sheriff's department involved in this case at all anymore, or?
no, sir.
Okay, so they transferred everything to you guys, and now you and Detective Sergeant Singleton, sorry, are leading this investigation, and it's up to you as to what moves forward from there.
Yes, sir.
And that was done as of March last year, 2022.
No, sir.
Okay, when was that done?
First week of August, I think, maybe the second week of August last year. March is when we started assisting from the sidelines, but
I see. And by assisting, you got up to speed, so you would learn a little bit about what they were doing, and then you and your partner took over the investigation in August of 2022.
correct. Yes, sir.
Couple additional questions. When Mr. Flood went through exhibits 22 and 23 with you, the ProMedica records and the Henry Ford Health Systems records, and the Blue Cross Blue Shield records, I think that was 24. You testified that you noticed that Deanne Warner had chronic conditions for migraines, neck and back problems. She sought counseling and had a primary care doctor and dentist, and that she was being treated for these chronic illnesses, right?
To be clear, sir, I think I had learned of that elsewhere and confirmed them with those documents.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
fair enough. And you were aware that she was taking a laundry list of medications as well?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Were you
I'm not sure I
ever,
agree with the term laundry list, but I'm on board. I understand.
do you know how many drugs?
I couldn't tell you, but there were several drugs that were consistent.
Okay. And a lot of them too, right?
A lot is your term, sir. I'm not sure I would characterize it that way.
Okay. When you went to visit the Warner home, did Dale Warner ever provide you a list or show you all of the pill bottles that have been prescribed in Dee's name?
I don't think he has ever shown me that, no, sir.
So your reference of the medications came from ProMedica, Henry Ford, or Blue Cross, or CVS, where the prescription was on file at the time of her disappearance.
There are other avenues that I have that information.
Okay. Can you share those, or you can't?
No, I can't. I just
Okay.
didn't, I don't want to get.
Yeah,
too far
and
ahead of it.
where else would you have found that information?
In searching the residence, I'm familiar with where her prescriptions were stored in a certain cabinet. I also know of investigative videos and photos of the like previously
Okay.
becoming involved. And there is a resource law enforcement uses to see the prescriptions that are prescribed to an individual. So you can perform a query, like if I were to come in contact with you on the street and you had numerous prescription pills,
Yeah.
I can run a query and see if you have those legitimately or not.
Fair enough. There was a question about a premier bank account. Do you know whether or not that bank account is still in existence?
I believe so, but I'm not certain.
If I told you it was closed 9 months ago by the state of Michigan, and it was pursuant to a subpoena that Mr. Polderman sent the other day, you'd be okay with that?
Oh, you know what? No, I'm sorry, sir. That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right, I have nothing further, Judge. Thank you.
Any other cross-examination, counselors?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Detective Sergeant, I'm Mr. McFarland. I'm the attorney guardian ad litem for Deanne Warner.
Well, sir,
Well, is it okay if I address you as Detective Sergeant?
detective's fine, sir.
Detective, okay, thanks. Part of what I do is I'm here to present to the court what I believe is in the best interest of Deanne Warner. And I know that you have said that your belief is that she's deceased, correct?
Well, I don't want to muddy the water, sir, but my investigation has led us to believe that she is
Thank you.
deceased.
And I'm sure your investigation would also involve a possibility of her being abducted, correct?
Yes, sir.
Can you explain what you did to rule out abduction?
Everything.
What does that consist of?
I can't go into too great a detail, sir, but
Fine.
Essentially there are only so many ways a person could be physically abducted. So I use the word physical intentionally.
Okay.
Having come to know of Dee Warner as a person, there would have been a physical abduction. You're not escorting her to a van. So without signs that would indicate that type of anomaly, or signs after the fact, such as a ransom or demands, or the discovery of her body somewhere because there was no ransom or demands, or a person being guilty of a similar party act in the area admitting to such a crime. Those are the ways you would typically find an abductor, so to speak.
And I would assume that on investigations, neighbors are asked and cameras are surveyed in the area to see if there was any suspicious activity, such as a vehicle to transport somebody in an abduction. Would that be an accurate general statement?
Yes, in addition to that, there are numerous means of detecting electronic devices in certain areas to determine, for instance, if you and I are out to lunch and we say someone perpetrated a crime against us, there should only be 3 devices there. If that makes sense.
Sure. Okay. So basically, your professional opinion is that you can rule out abduction. Would that be accurate?
Absolutely.
Thank you. That helps me. And if you can't answer this, let me know, because I'm not sure what your constraints are, but are there suspects as far as her missing?
Are you asking if there's a suspect for her murder?
Sure.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can you reveal that?
Dee Warner?
Thank you. Is there anybody else who is the suspect in her murder?
Not a viable one, no, sir.
What do you, I don't know the terminology when you use viable, what do you mean by that?
For instance, I can't give a specific one, but if I were to receive an anonymous tip saying you should talk to so-and-so because he didn't like D. Warner. So those types of tips have been received and vetted thoroughly. So every investigative avenue to eliminate Dale Warner and find another culprit has been executed, unfortunately, to no avail.
Thank you. My understanding is there were no signs of forced entry. Would that be correct?
So you're referring to the Munger Road residence? That's
Correct, at the Munger Road.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and I know we've seen the YouTube videos, and so we know that there exists some type of video surveillance on the Munger Road property, correct?
Yes,
You have viewed those, correct?
correct.
Nothing would reveal to you there's been an abduction, correct? Based upon your.
Nothing from that video would imply or show that a unknown third party abducted D. Warner.
Thank you. Okay. By that, I think what you're perhaps saying but not saying is that there's a possibility that Dale Warner could have had something to do with her missing, correct?
So I've labeled him as a suspect. I'm not going to get into
That's fine. Okay, yep, I appreciate that. If you can, and I don't know if this is a parameter that I can't ask, but can you explain how you determined that D. Warner did not obtain anything from the dark web? I know there's a question asked about her obtaining, let's say, a fake passport or something like that.
at the risk of sounding cute, sir.
Yeah.
I think you could obtain a passport on the dark web.
I've never been on the dark web, so I have no idea. You know, we all watch TV shows. I don't know what's reality and what's not.
So access to it has to be permitted by people that are currently on the dark web.
Okay.
So in doing so, there would be a digital footprint of that access. Additionally, if you could find the means to then purchase something off the dark web by means of probably some sort of cryptocurrency, there would yet again be a digital footprint of that usage. Separately, probably, this is my opinion, I guess, in some approximation, 85% of what you purchase on the dark web is not what you think you are purchasing. For instance, for probably $100, I could go on there, or someone in my position could go on there and purchase 100 credit card numbers with a last name and birth date, assuming I could use that fraudulently. Probably less than 20% of those are viable or useful. Does that make sense? So most of what you're buying is from another criminal that's going to give you something that isn't what you want anyhow. So the likelihood of someone in D. Warner's position who can, forgive me, but barely use their own phone, going onto the dark web to purchase a viable passport or driver's license with no means, I'm sorry, but it's laughable.
What do you mean by barely using her own phone? I don't know what that means.
Her ability with technology wasn't the greatest, sir.
I appreciate that.
By no disrespect to her, but
Okay, I appreciate that. Okay. Is there any evidence of large withdrawals by D. Warner after the 4/25/21 disappearance date? Any withdrawals by her personally?
none.
I believe. No, there's no evidence that she cashed any checks after 4/25/21 either, correct?
Correct.
That's all I have. Thank you for your information.
Ms. Berger?
I just have a few, Your Honor. Detective, you testified that in relation to the Secret Service documents, that there has been no activity related to Ms. Warner's passport or her name and photo. Is that correct?
Correct. If I could further clarify, that type of query is conducted in a search for, I'm hoping to find that record. So I want anything and everything that would suggest her presence somewhere physically. And that was not discovered.
And that would, that search includes, for instance, if her photo was used with a different name,
Exactly.
or if her name was used with someone else's photo.
Precisely.
And those things didn't come up either way, correct?
That's accurate, yes, ma'am.
Okay. And in relation to the Verizon phone that you testified about, was this phone eventually shut off?
I'm unclear on whether or not it maintained active service. as recently as this past late winter or spring, the business, air quotes, the business was utilizing that phone number again. I'm unsure if it maintained continuous activity since then.
And what do you mean by using that phone number?
In the course of our regular investigation, I'm monitoring that phone number. And it appeared to, again, have usage, and I was then informed by someone from the family that, oh, we're using it again for the business. That makes sense.
Do you know if it's being made to make calls or receive calls?
I think at the time there weren't very many records, and I think it was a variety of both.
And you have investigated several of these types of cases, is that correct?
This case is unique, but numerous homicides and missing people, yes, ma'am.
Okay. And during those investigations, do people's loved ones generally shut off those phones? Do they leave them on? What do they do with them if they have them?
In a situation where someone's leaving willingly, ma'am, is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Their phone would usually be kept on, or immediately upon leaving, a secondary number would be created so they continue contact with their other loved ones or family.
And in investigations where the person has not left voluntarily?
In investigations where the person is not left voluntarily, typically the phone will remain active until people have different means. If a family can't continue to pay that phone bill, it may have service shut off. If that makes sense.
It does. And you testified briefly to the power of attorney that was attempted to be used to gain access to a bank account. Do you recall that?
Yes, ma'am.
And what bank account was this, if you're aware?
You have to forgive me, ma'am. I can't recall if it was Premier or if it was the credit union.
Okay.
But it was one of the two. I'm sorry.
And do you know what specific account that was attempted to use to access?
It was an account in solely in D. Warner's name.
Okay. And did that access work?
No, ma'am.
Do you know why?
The bank teller, to my understanding, had at least a suspicion that the signature was not D. Warner's and therefore rejected the use of the power of attorney.
Okay. And are you aware if that account still exists today?
I'm unsure. I had my memory refreshed earlier that the conservator may have closed some of those accounts. I'm not certain if that was one of them.
Okay. I have no further questions. Thank you.
Ms. Wilhelm?
Yes, just a couple.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. Yes, good afternoon. Well, close to it.
Ma'am?
I'm the guardian ad litem for Angelina Warner. That's my position here today. So I just want to ask you a couple of questions about your investigative finding that Diaz did. So I heard your testimony today, and that finding was based on the things that you testified today to the court about the absence of uses of insurance and the absence of using of checking accounts, the absence of buying stuff and getting passports. Is that correct?
In a way, ma'am, my testimony today is a reflection of her life, not necessarily of the circumstances of her death. Does that make sense?
It does. And so your finding that she is dead is based on no proof of life. Is that correct?
No, ma'am. That would be my finding for her to be deceased, not for the method or means in which she died.
Okay, but you did testify today that she is dead.
Yeah, and again, I'm not playing cute.
No, I
sure you
know,
understand.
you're fine. And I'm just trying to get to what you base that on. And I'm wondering if there was anything outside of your testimony today that helped to lead you to that finding.
Yeah, that's a good question, ma'am. So my testimony today to reflect her, whether or not she's alive, is probably, I would venture to say 2% of the findings of the investigation. So the finding of the investigation that would suggest that she's not alive is overwhelmingly in support of the fact that that her death was within a criminal element. Does that make sense?
Okay, are you at liberty to discuss any of those?
No, ma'am.
All right, so your testimony then is that 2% basically is the no proof of life
That's
that we
correct.
discussed today.
Yes, ma'am.
And then the bulk of what went into your finding, you're not at liberty to talk about today.
Due to the criminal element, yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Okay, I'll redirect.
Just briefly.
well, let me ask you this, are we gonna be able to conclude by noon, or should we plan on inviting our detective back after lunch?
I have 4 questions to ask after he's done.
Then I probably suggest we go to lunch, Judge,
Right?
because 4 questions is gonna take more than 10 minutes.
How many questions do you have?
Not many. I don't know, about 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 5-10 minutes. If you want to continue, I don't have a problem.
I'm right, Judge.
I'd like to try to see if we can get.
Sure,
this tested.
sure, I'll try to be quick.
Having a great time, Judge.
Thank you. Good, all right, well, we'll see how this goes.
Did you say that was? Detective Sergeant, I just have a few questions. When I asked you your opinion on D. Warner, you had indicated unequivocally that your investigation, she is dead, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you dead in a homicide investigation, correct?
Yes, sir.
Homicide is defined by an unnatural cause of death. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir.
You have been working through this case with the team. Is that fair?
Yes, sir.
And to give the court some, just to make the record clear, your team consists of your resources at the Michigan State Police,
And then some. Yes, sir.
outside of the Michigan State Police, yes?
Correct.
Special agencies,
Yes, sir.
both federal and state.
Correct. Yes, sir.
And over a period of time, I think you said sometime in March of last year, or of this year?
March of last year.
Last year?
We started helping, and August was full time for us. Yes, sir.
I see, August of 2022.
Correct.
So that's coming up to a year.
I think we just hit a year. Yes, sir.
And in some investigations, that's a nanosecond, fair to say?
Correct.
But in this investigation, if you had to give this court, because not everyone's familiar with criminal investigations, if you had to give a bird's eye view of the man hours, power, resources, money that went in to formulate your team's opinion that this is a homicide, could you give the court some estimation?
That would be very difficult, but I could explain briefly some of the resources that would help, sir.
Sure, I think that would help to give us an understanding of how in depth this is.
I personally probably work an average of 50 hours a week, sometimes, on this case specifically, up to 80 hours a week. I have been on nothing but this investigation since last August. My partner, who has a similar schedule, has been on nothing but this investigation since last August. We have a third detective who has been on this case about 80% of the time up until June. Now he's on it maybe 10% of the time for other reasons not related to the case. Separate than that, we conducted, I've probably written over 100 search warrants, sir. We've searched 4,000 acres with over 120 people in a matter of a few days. I couldn't begin to tell you the money that this has cost.
You've mentioned 3 people, multiple searches.
I'm having a hard time even categorizing. I'm sorry, I'm at a loss to.
But the gravamen of of this investigation, you've come to this opinion. I'm just trying to get an understanding. This wasn't on a whim with 1 or 2 investigators. This is a year of investigation with hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions, into this resource for you to make a determination, is what you're telling the court.
That's accurate, yes, sir.
I've looked through the bank records of what we've had and submitted
And have you had the opportunity to look to see after you came, after April 24th, how fast money was being attempted to be converted in one way or the other?
I'm gonna object to this. He hasn't said who, where, what. Mr. Flood, don't testify, just ask a question.
I just asked.
My objection is he's testifying for the witness.
No, I just asked if he had come to find out when money, how soon thereafter the missing of April 24th, that date, started being changed or converted, if you know.
There's been no suggestion that any money was converted or changed. I'm
Well,
not sure where
well,
this-
let me ask you this question. Did you come to find out if any money had been changing from D. Warner or the like? We just talked about the power of attorney and that process. Did you come to find out about any other information regarding conversion or trying to get money from D. Warner's accounts? And if you can't get into that, I understand.
Money and other resources, yes, sir.
Okay. How soon thereafter of April 24th, if you know?
I apologize for the exact date escapes me, but within, I believe 2 weeks, it might be 3 weeks at most, there was an attempt to gain access to some of her funds by Dale Warner at that bank.
Did you, Mr. Lee asked you some questions with regards to financing and the like. Did you come to find out that in fact, Mr. Weisberg was, prior to April 24th, 2021, he was fired by D. Warner?
Oh, yes, sir, I can offer a bit of explanation if you'd like.
Sure.
It's to my understanding that Dee and Mark did not get along for personal, professional reasons, whatever it was. And that through the course of business, it was, at least of her opinion and others, that Mr. Weisberg was setting a stage, so to speak, to embezzle money from the company. And that in combination of their personal differences.
Sir, I'm gonna object to this testimony. There's been no foundation laid that anybody did anything. There was no embezzlement, diversion.
Well, no, you brought up the whole portion about the investigation with regards to funds.
What proof is there that Mr. Weisberg had anything to do with any of this?
That's his testimony, Judge.
What is the nature of your objection specifically?
Like, once again, Mr. Flood is testifying. Number two, Mr. Weisberg's not involved in this case at all. I'm not sure why his name is even being brought up, other than that he worked there after D. Warner disappeared. There's been no testimony whatsoever that we did anything illegal or unethical or wrong. Nothing. This whole idea that D. Warner, I mean, Dale and Dee were married. They're still married. Mr. Warner has the authority to act on her behalf. Certainly up until the time of the conservatorship was put in place. There's nothing illegal about this. I'm not sure why it's being portrayed that way.
So relevance and testimony, I'm going to go ahead and overrule the objection on the basis of testimony. As to relevance, Ms. Berger standing.
Yes, Your Honor. I believe that Mr. Lee opened the door to the many employees that worked in the office at the time of Dee's disappearance, Mark Weisberg being one of those people.
Mr. Weisberg did not work there at the time of his disappearance.
Let's let Ms. Berger finish her response.
Sure, there were several people that worked in the office at the time of Dee's disappearance, and shortly thereafter, those things have changed. So I think that if we are allowing testimony, which this court did, related to those individuals that work there and who no longer work there, I think it's only fair to allow testimony as related to the individuals that do currently work there.
Did you have any further response, Mr. Flood?
And Judge did. His whole line of questioning was as it related to the financing. I just asked simply, if he knew about the situation with the finances and D. Warner pre-24, April 24. So that's what I was getting into when he was explaining.
I'm gonna rule the objection. I think we did have a lot of testimony on who's working in the office and the financials, which was spearheaded in large part by Mr. Leap. So I'm gonna allow the testimony. Make it to.
You were answering the question about Ms. Warner firing Mr. Weisberg, and then in turn giving us some explanation of what had taken place once April 24th, if I understood it correctly, she's hired again. He's hired again.
And to be clear, sir, I know that his, he was definitely employed there, that employment ceased. If he was fired, but I'm not sure. I
Okay.
believe he was fired, but in any case, after April 25th, he resumes his employment there.
Okay. And do you not know about the lawsuit that Mr. Weisberg filed against D. Warner after she
I'm
filed?
not familiar with that. no,
Okay.
sir.
Thank you. You got into with Mr. Lieb about relationships and speaking with Dale Warner. Did you have information through your investigation that Dee was a victim of domestic violence?
I'm going to object to that.
Well, that's what you talked about in the relationships.
I never mentioned the word domestic.
No, you
violence in
didn't.
Anything I said, and this witness wouldn't know that. He never met D. Warner.
Well, it's not,
There's
you
no
know, it's
personal
not
knowledge.
about whether or not he met D. Warner, it's whether his investigation revealed that.
I'm going to object to this.
And it's already been placed in the record by 4 other witnesses in the previous hearing.
One witness suggested.
No,
that-
that's not true.
One witness who was a massage therapist
The very,
suggested she saw some bruises. That was it. I
no,
have the
that's,
transcript.
I have the transcript, I just read it.
Gentlemen, would you say that this is outside the scope of the redirect? Was it something that was discussed during the cross-examination of any other witness?
Yes.
Or any other, of
Two-
any other
yes.
counsel?
Two parts, Your Honor. He brought up the relationships with regards to Dale and Dee and whether or not there was investigation into that. Second, we already have it established on this record by 2 witnesses. The very first witness, Dale's sister-in-law, talks about domestic violence. Then the massage therapist talks about domestic violence. I simply asked if this investigator had, in his investigation, come upon that knowledge. That's all I wanted to ask.
All right, any further response to that, Mr. Lee?
I think it's irrelevant. I don't think it matters. And I don't think he's interviewed anybody that would have had any contact with her post her disappearance. We don't know. We don't know. It's pure speculation, Judge. And this is a topic that I know Mr. Flood wants to get into later with a potential witness he wants to testify. And I filed my motion to strike that witness. This is not appropriate, Your Honor.
Well, Mr. Lee, I do think you've opened the door on that with your questions, so I'm gonna overrule the
I
objection.
never asked a question
And
about
I'm gonna
domestic
allow
violence,
the
Judge.
witness to respond to the question. Thank you.
Can you repeat it? I'm sorry, sir.
During your investigation, did you ever come across any information that pertained to domestic violence between Dale and Dee?
Yes, we've had more than one witness report that. In addition, we have what I will say is physical evidence to support that also that I unfortunately cannot get into, sir.
Thank you. You understand, to some extent, Dale Warner is taking a Fifth Amendment privilege. Have you attempted to, did you know that he has taken the Fifth Amendment in this case?
Yes, sir, I was informed of that. I'm sure it was last week or the week before.
Thank you. I have no other questions, Judge. I do have the
power of attorney and exhibits 10 and 15, I can approach.
10, 15, and 36, have your fellow council had a chance to review those and?
I don't know if you have or haven't.
He
confirm?
circulated several months ago, Judge.
No objection.
No objection.
Mr. Lee, do you want to look at these?
I was.
All right, you may approach. I have before me 10 and 15. No.
Your Honor, if I might just add, when we stipulated to a non-jury trial, I thought we also stipulated to all the proposed exhibits that Mr. Flood had.
The proposed exhibits that I received that were, no problem, submitted to the court, several of them reference live testimony only, Mr. McFarland.
Thank
So I
you.
didn't have those, which is why we're reviewing them. Mr. Colderman, did you need a chance to look at these two documents, or are you satisfied with the inquiry that's been done on record?
I'm satisfied with the inquiry, Your Honor.
Thank you. We have received them and will be added to our books. Did you say you wanted me to have a copy of 36?
Yes, Judge.
So 10, 15, which is that? Just 10, 15.
I just had the statement copy when I.
That's 36, Your Honor. I'll have it printed out.
So I have on the proposed exhibit 36, 1, 2, 3 pages only.
That's accurate, Judge. There's a signature page that I think I accidentally or inadvertently gave back to Mr. Lee, but I'll print out a second copy.
In any event, Judge, that signature page has already been entered through the expert related to the handwriting.
Witness.
Which exhibit was that?
Remember the page 6.
I believe 16, but I'm not.
But if you look to your page, Your Honor,
It was an examination of it done on a,
yeah, and we entered it and put it on page 6. If you look at the thing I gave you, it would have been the expert opinion, and he attached to that expert opinion the forged signature composites.
the forensic document examination report?
That's accurate.
Okay, I do have that provided. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other objections to the first 3 pages of the power of attorney for 36?
No.
Nothing, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. That will be added as well.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Go ahead, Mr. Lee.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective Sergeant. You never met Dave Warner, right?
No, sir.
And so all of your testimony today is based upon either your investigation, and I mean yours, meaning your collective investigation with your partners, or interviews you conducted with people, right? There's no personal knowledge. You have never met Dave Warner.
Correct.
Okay. You testified a few minutes ago that Dave Warner had a lack of technology. How do you know that?
Your Honor, I'm going to object. This is outside the scope of a redirect, or I'm sorry, a recross. This was not covered in the redirect.
So just,
I just want to know what he means by a lack of technology.
Then you should have asked it in your first cross.
well,
It was brought up after my cross.
that's true. It was brought in under Mr. McFarland's cross-examination. So
Fair.
we'll overrule the judge. Go ahead.
What would you say? Why would you say she had a lack of technology?
That is a compilation of witness interviews and a review of devices that she had previously owned or possessed.
Do you know
And
what,
records
do
thereof.
you know what Miss Warner's educational background was?
I couldn't tell you exactly, no, sir.
Okay. You know whether or not she had any college degrees?
I don't believe she did, no, sir.
Everything I've been told about it is she was very high.
Is testifying definitely outside of anyone's redirect or cross.
Fair enough. In my investigation, I'm going to ask you a question, but in my investigation, from the very people you investigated, I was told she was of a high functioning nature.
Well,
You disagree with that?
yeah, now we're getting into something totally different. I don't know the people that he interviewed. I'd like to see that.
Same people you did.
And then
Mr. Floyd.
two, Judge, it's outside the scope of what we did over here on our cross or redirect.
You know,
Would you like to respond?
no. No. I'd rather just get this done and go to lunch. And if Mr. Flood would just keep his seat, I'd be happy to do that.
Well, I would, Judge, if.
Did you, in your investigation, and I mean the collective investigation, interview any of Miss Warner's doctors, physicians, mental health professionals?
I personally have not, no, sir.
Has anybody on your team interviewed any of her doctors, mental health professionals?
Some interviews were done by the sheriff's department.
Okay.
So it's kind of convoluted when you say the team. So there are some records of interviews being conducted, but I don't believe any of them were Michigan State Police.
Did you ever
personnel.
meet with Craig Miller?
I have not met with Craig Miller.
Has anybody at the sheriff's department met with Craig Miller to your knowledge?
Yes,
Has your partner met with Craig Miller?
not professionally at least.
Were you provided Craig Miller's records
Yes.
and the complete file of D. Warner?
It's my understanding it's a complete file. Yes, sir.
And how was that obtained through search warrant?
I'm unclear. That was not obtained by us. It was our predecessor.
But you're in possession of it at this point?
Yes, sir.
And that's a part of your investigation?
Yes, sir.
How many search warrants have you issued in this case? You said 100?
Over 100. I don't have an exact number, sir.
Have all of them been signed by a magistrate?
By a judge.
Do you know which judge?
Typically Judge Olsaber.
Any particular reason why he signed them all, or that he's just the one on call at the time?
Not to speak ill of other judges, but he's pretty savvy with email, so it's easy. I don't have to come in and see him.
Got it. So the search warrants have been prepared by you or your partner or your team?
You know, I wish he'd do something, to be honest with you, sir, but I've been doing all of it myself.
So you prepared all the search warrants and you then present them to Judge Olsaber, who signs
To the prosecutor and the judge, yes, sir.
them. And have they yielded any results that you know of?
Yes.
Any results that you're comfortable talking about here, or is that a part of your investigation?
The search warrants cover such a wide array of topics and records, sir. I don't know how to respond to your question.
Fair enough. So in the hundreds of search warrants, you have accumulated documents and other things, correct?
The search warrants have resulted in numerous things.
Okay, fair enough. And that would include a search warrant that was executed on May 4th that looked up or dug up probably several thousand acres of land. Is that right?
We excavated one site with machinery, but there was other manipulation of soil in other areas. I'm not sure which one you're referring to.
And I have requested some of the search warrants and the tabulation results. Is that true?
I know I've provided you and or Mr. Warner the returning tab. I'm not sure if you, but you know what? I did speak to you. I did send you one, I think, personally. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Not the search warrant, but no, I'm sorry, the search warrant and the tab, not the affidavit. Yeah.
Correct. Okay. Dale and Dee Warner are married, right? There's been no separation that you know of other than her disappearance, right? She's missing, obviously, but under the guise of the law, they're still married, right?
Correct.
Okay. And so if at some point in time after Dee's disappearance, while Dale was operating the businesses and legal documents suggested he had a right
Yeah.
to use Dee's position as a part of the company, there's nothing illegal about that, right?
Justice, I object to the form of the question. The legality is up to the court. A myriad of other objections to that question.
Outside the scope of everything we've done.
The bank account you testified to earlier where Dale Warner tried to cash a check. Do you know whether or not his signature was on that account?
I'm not familiar with him trying to cash a check.
I thought I heard you testify that he attempted to cash a check in a bank that was,
Try to withdraw funds, my understanding, sir.
yeah. Right. Was he illegally allowed to do that you know?
Well, apparently not, if the bank said no.
Well, the bank may have not known what the status was, right? You don't know whether or not the bank had any documentation to that effect, do you?
I know that only her name is on the account, which would remove the ability of someone else to access it.
As it relates to Mr. Weisberg, and then I'll be done. You know when Mr. Weisberg came back to work for Dale Warner after Dee's disappearance?
I don't have an exact date.
Okay. It was, do you know whether it was right after she disappeared or, I know you don't have a date, but can you give me an approximate time? You must have talked to somebody that would have told you that, right?
I guess I can, without going into too great a detail, sir, I can say that there was not much contact between Dale Warner and Mark Weisberg for quite some time. And then 3 days after her disappearance, he starts contacting Mark Weisberg for some reason. He then shortly after becomes an employee of the company again. So,
Do you know that he's an employee?
I'm sorry?
Do you know that his status is as a?
He's acting as an agent for Dale Warner in some
Okay,
capacity.
you'll
so-
agree with me,
So
that doesn't mean,
he's employing them in some way, unless he's doing it for free, which I would find hard to believe.
but it could be a consultant, it could be something, it doesn't necessarily mean he works for the companies, right?
I would assume that based off of the actions that Mark Weisberg is conducting himself in, he's being paid by Dale Warner to do them, which by the basic definition would make him an employee of some kind.
I would beg to differ with you. I mean, you could be a consultant, you could be an agent, you could be lots of things. An employee under the law qualifies.
Okay,
you
so
for
Dale
certain-
Warner is paying Mark Weisberg to do things.
That's fair enough. That's reasonable, and that's perfectly legal, isn't it?
I would assume so, I don't know.
Nothing further, Judge.
Right, last opportunity for recross from our other attorneys.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
I don't have 4 questions, I just have one. When you said there's domestic violence between Dale Warner and Deanne Warner, is it your findings that Deanne Warner was the victim of domestic violence?
Absolutely.
Nothing further.
Ms. Wilhelm,
No further.
thank you for your testimony.
Thank
Your Honor, I have one question.
Oh my gosh, Mr. Polderman? Go ahead with any questions you have.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective, one question regarding the SBA loan document. The electronic signatures on there, I believe there's one for Dale Warner and one for D Warner. Do you know who signed on behalf of D Warner?
I know that it's not Dee Warner. I do not know who signed on behalf of her.
Nothing further.
Okay, all right. Should we excuse the detective or do we need to reserve him, counselors?
I'm good with the excuse me. Thank you, Your Honor.
No objection to the same?
No objection.
No objection.
No objection.
All right, thank you so much for your time and your testimony, detective.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome to be on your way. As for the rest of us, we will also be taking a lunch break. But before we do that, we're going to go back on record in the conservatorship matter. So we'll be in recess. Let's give this until 2 o'clock.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Definitely take a bit of an extra time.